Hello, everyone. My name is Kimara, and I would like to welcome you to my YouTube page, We Care. We Care is where we care about you, we care about your family, and we care about your community. So I welcome you to my YouTube page. Today's topic I'm going to be discussing with you is called Stages of Disaster. Often in life, we may have disasters that come apart and come upon us, and of course, we never plan for a disaster to happen. However, there are times where we kind of feel like something can happen, so we think about it, um, kind of have some type of preparation for it, but not necessarily just expecting for a disaster to happen. Some disasters happen. You can be walking down the street and something can happen and it can be disastrous. You can be driving your car and something can happen and it can be a disastrous situation. However, the situation is, you never know when that situation is going to occur. But there are stages and phases that you go through, that one goes through in regards to a disaster, and there's also impact from disasters that can take upon in your life. So, to start this conversation, I'm going to be reading, and I want to just mention a little statement here about kind of like the definition of disaster. And that is collective trauma is described as a blow to the basic tissues of social life that damage the bonds of attaching people together and impairs the prevailing sense of community. Now, what does that truly mean when it comes down to disaster? Well, for me, I would like to say that what I take that as is a blow to the basic tissues of social life. If you break that down, that just means that there's been a blow to your life, and it affects your social life. It affects the way you socialize with people. It affects the way you socialize in the community. It affects the way you socialize with people in your family, your friends. And so just because of that, it brings damage to the bonds that you have as an attachment to people. And even all of that together, it impairs the prevailing sense of community. So in regards to that, by impairing your prevailing sense of community, it impairs you to not even want to go out in the community. It can impair you to not even, you can have fear about what can happen in the community. Look at 9/11, for instance. People probably are scared to go in buildings now because of 9/11. Hurricane Katrina. People are scared to basically be in the area of hurricanes because Hurricane Katrina happened. And even in the sense of that destroyed an entire community where people had to move away from their families. Families got displaced. Cousins over here, people died. You don't know where they are. And people are just now trying to get all of that back together. So just in reference to that, disasters can be something that brings upon a collective amount of trauma amongst one person or a community or your family. Now, talking about a disaster, it has a very, very large impact on you when you're going through a disaster, such as an impact on your mind, an impact again in your family. It can impact your finances, your resources. Mental health is at an all-time high right now because of the impact of disasters. Take, for instance, the pandemic. That was a disastrous situation. We didn't expect that to happen. No one on this earth expected that to happen. No one on this earth knew that that could even happen. No one. So when it did happen, look how many people died from that. That alone was something that took a toll on a lot of people mentally. You had to stay in the house for days. Couldn't come out, quarantine, scared you were going to get the COVID. If you got it, you were scared you were going to die. That alone took a toll. Not only that, the people that were having it in the hospital couldn't see their families. You had to go to a window just to talk to your people through a window to see your family. It just was a very, very bad impact on the entire nation, if you think about that. So the impact that it put on your mind, though, was tremendous. And here today, still today, mental health is at an all-time high because of that incident. Not only that, it's an awareness now for us. A lot of people are more aware of mental health in reference to how it impacts you and it impacts your mind, and the stress that it can bring upon a person. Stress is contagious. So if you're stressed out and you're around somebody else, that energy that you have can come off on them because you can be angry, agitated, irritated. You can be to the point where you don't want to talk to nobody. You withdraw from people. It just brings a lot upon you. Depression, PTSD, anxiety, all of these things are related to stress. All of these things are related to things that can happen in your life, events that can happen, disasters that can happen. So it's very hard when you're going through a disaster, because it does bring around stress. And it affects your whole entire community, your family, as well as yourself and your mind. So looking at that, let's talk about how we can get upon that though. After you go through the disaster process, the disaster happens, okay? And then you come to a heroic phase, and I hope I'm saying that right, like a hero phase. That's where you may get some resources. You may get, someone trying to help you. You get a little bit of relief in response to come in and try to help you. And then you have to go through a phase of recovery. So going through that phase of recovery, you come through a honeymoon phase where you have encouragement, you have hope, you have faith, like everything is going to be okay. You start praying, you start looking at the bright side of things. You start feeling like, hey, I'm going to be okay. Everything going to be all right. I got relief coming. I got response here. Things have happened, but at least I'm not dead. I'm looking at this situation on an upbring. Like things are going to lift up. But then when things don't lift up in the timely manner that you want them to, you start to feel a little bit of discouragement again. That phase is called a disillusionment phase. And you go through a phase of where you're not sure. You're not sure that what you just felt in regards to, I'm believing that this is going to happen. I'm going to be all right. You're not sure that you're going to be okay because now you feel like, hey, it's taking too long. I don't know what's going on. This phase I'm going through, I don't know. So you start having doubt. You start doubting yourself that, hey, maybe I ain't where I need to be. Maybe I'm not sure. You start beating yourself up a little bit, like, wow, why do I have to go through this? Here we go again. I was just okay yesterday. I was feeling good. I had hope. Now what's all this coming upon me? It is at that very stage where I'm going to say counseling. I went through something myself. And I had to go through these stages, and it caused a disaster in my life. I mean, a true disaster. And I can honestly say that I went through a lot of these stages that I'm talking about and mentioning here. And it was at this very stage that I'm talking to you all about, the disillusionment stage, where I said it right, where I actually had to get counseling. I mean, that was part of my recovery. And I'm going to tell you, I'm still recovering. I think counseling is good to have, period, especially if you've been through a lot in your life, because certain things in your life that you've been through in your past can still come up and you can be re-triggered just from a disaster happening, just from a situation happening. You just never know what can happen. So in regards to that, counseling at that stage, that's when it's needed in regards to your recovery process, and it's helpful. But then you come to the last phase, and that's reconstruction. That's where after you get your counseling, you begin to rebuild yourself. You begin to have self-care. You begin to become in a new place for your life, such as a new normal. You have a new normal. You're now practicing things that makes you feel better. You're now doing things that are new so that you can let go of the things that were in the past. And you're learning to let go of things. You're learning to be a new person. such as in an event. Like if an event happened and a situation happened, Hurricane Katrina, the 9/11, the pandemic. We're still having effects of the pandemic, but we are in a reconstruction phase because a lot of things have changed and we are now living in a new normal. So these phases of disaster, I know one hates to go through disasters, but if a disaster happens, these phases are very helpful to get you through. And as long as you can recognize the phases and understand each phase as you're going through, I think your recovery process can be a lot more lenient. It could be a lot more less stressful on you. And I'm going to say, let it happen. If it happens, let it happen. Embrace the moment because that's the only way you're going to get through. And the key word to getting through is you're going through. You're not stagnant, you're not stuck, but you're moving. You're moving through. And as long as you can move through, there's growth on the other side, of that. So that is what I had for you today. Wanted to just talk about the stages of disaster because I feel like there's a need for that. And hopefully no one has to come into an encounter with the disaster, but we never know when that's going to happen. And so as long as you learn the stages, you can get through. So thank you for watching me today and joining me in this message. And again, thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel, We Care, where we care about you, your family, and your community. You all have a great one.